Hello, welcome to today's EIS Council sponsored EarthX Middle Planning Meeting. My name is John Heltzel. I'm the Director for Resilience Planning for the Council, and we appreciate you making time to be part of our group. This is kind of the dedicated hardcore group that wants to know about the guts of EarthX, and we like talking about it. So I appreciate you making time. I've got quite a few slides and a number of things to talk about today. So we're going to cut through these fairly quickly. Everyone will get a copy of the slides and a link to the video in case for some reason you might want to go back and listen to a specific part or to share it maybe with some of your partners just to make sure that they get read in as early as possible. But anyway, let's jump into this. And as always, you can put questions in the question box or the chat window. Mr. Ranger Dorn, my partner in exercises here, is going to be monitoring those. And of course, and I'll mention this several times, feel free to reach out to us at the EarthX email address, and we'll answer any question we can at that time. So we got a number of questions after our last session at the initial planning meeting, which was great. I do appreciate your all's questions, and it helps us refine what we're doing. So let's talk about EarthX 21. Are you ready is the theme for this year's exercise. What is EarthX? EarthX is a very large international exercise that is presented by the Electric Infrastructure Security Council to help everyone around the globe with their preparedness and resilience to a series of potentially black sky events. And we'll talk about black sky coming up. But EarthX is a exercise that we distribute using some new tools, and it's open for play for literally everybody in the world. And this is our 5th year of playing EarthX, and last year we had 41 countries and over 12,000 participants. So from start to now, quite a footprint, but it's a great opportunity, which is the second question: why play EarthX? The truth is the world is changing. We live in a place now that is so tightly interconnected and interdependent that it really is a new point in human history, and the things that can impact us on one side of the globe can easily come and impact us where we live as well. And we've all seen that in the last year with the pandemic. Why play EarthX? To get better, to learn the lessons that we can learn in a virtual environment and not have to learn those lessons in the real world when an actual black sky threat approaches or falls upon us. EarthX is a great opportunity to test our plans, to test our policies, to begin dialogues, and to think through cross-sector planning requirements and cross-sector sharing of information. And EarthX, the way we've constructed it, does all those things. An interesting question came up, which is, well, what does EarthX cost? This year, again, I'm happy to say that EarthX is free. There is no charge for EarthX. There never has been a charge for EarthX. And as long as we've got the support that we've got, we're going to continue down that mode. So please don't worry about the cost. Our foundation partners have underwritten it again this year, and so sign up and register and play. What can you expect when you play EarthX? Well, one, you can expect a dynamic, challenging environment. I have been in the exercise world my entire adult life, and I've unfortunately had to sit through many boring exercises, which are just kind of one pole selectric, one issue we're trying to address, and really just one small segment of what really needs to be done. That is not EarthX. EarthX comes at you head on. It brings you many different opportunities to think through a multitude of scenarios, all in a manner that will help you get better as you consider the information that's presented and the information that you have to determine on your own. So it is challenging, it is exciting, it is thought-provoking, and if you play it straight up and you bring in your team, you will find that at the end of EarthX, you will be better prepared for whatever might come your way. And we've actually gotten some incredible feedback from previous participants that have told us playing EarthX helped them make it through some of the disasters that they faced in the real world. Interesting question also is EarthX right for my organization or family? The answer to that is an outstanding absolutely yes. The only group I would think that wouldn't benefit from playing with EarthX might be very young children. But about the time children reach elementary school age, they should probably be aware that there are things called disasters and emergencies, and they need to be part of your family team that has to deal with those when they happen. Much better to socialize the information ahead of time and early on and do it in a manner that you can control than having to just jump into one because a flood or a fire or another catastrophe befell your community. So absolutely, and we have a special lane for individuals and families, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Another great question, can EarthX support my EMPG grant requirement? EMPG grants come from FEMA or Homeland Security. They're administered through the state down to the local level. And the beautiful thing about EarthX is our development team has a background in working with the HSEEP guidance, the Homeland Security Exercise Preparedness Program guidance. And everything we give you is what you need to be able to use EarthX participation to meet your grant requirement. The only thing we don't do is your after action report and your improvement plan. And to be honest, if you pay attention and use the materials we provide, you're just one step away from completing that and meeting one of your grant requirements. So for those of you all in the emergency management world that need that requirement or want to meet that condition, you should definitely consider using EarthX as one of your exercises. Very interesting question because people get confused all the time about this is how many can actually play EarthX? EarthX, we don't know what the limit is, but it's much bigger than anything we've ever hit. We are using a virtual engine. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We're on the most sophisticated cloud network in the world. It is the one that's making money hand over fist. So if you're a fan of Mr. Bezos, we're using his cloud structure these days. And literally we can support hundreds of thousands of players at the same time. So there's no limit. And when you play EarthX locally, you can configure it a number of different ways, and I'll talk about that in just a second, so that you can expand your team as you need to. And then last question that came up last year, and last year was the first year we could give a resounding yes to this. Can I play more than once? Absolutely. Again, we want you to play more than once. We want you to play multiple functional areas and multiple lanes. The exercise is available for a 60-day timeline. And if you want to try 1 week, maybe improve a few things and try it again, you are more than welcome to do that against the same registration, as a matter of fact. But we'll talk more about that going forward. So let's jump into some of the meat, but I wanted to cover these points up front just in case some of you all might be time limited. So we talked a little bit about EarthX being a unique exercise. In so many exercises, you open the 3-ring binder and you kind of page your way through it. That's not EarthX. You will end up with some material that you can use to help guide your play, but everything we do on EarthX is delivered through the internet, but it is exceptionally flexible and adaptable. You can customize the way you want to play EarthX to meet your specific training needs. Obviously, we want everybody to play the individual and family preparedness lane, but as an organization, you can split your organization up into multiple configurations. You can go from a centralized topography, which we've seen that done in many, many states at state EOCs and county EOCs, but you can also decentralize it. And in the last couple of years, we've got a number of examples that have been reported to us where people had very successful exercises playing it at for example, potentially the organizational headquarters, but also allowing it to be played at the distributed regional locations and then folding back together to conduct the discussion sessions. What a great opportunity and great capability to do that. Really use this exercise to push it across the organization and get everybody's buy-in on what's going on. Another way to look at it too is by breaking it down by functional groups. You can play this as an operations group. You can play it underneath a resource management group. You can actually do it at the executive level or the C-suite level and let leadership play and compare their actions to maybe operations or resource management or another element. And then finally, one of the great examples we got last year was an organization that actually played A-Team, B-Team. They took the exercise and they let one team come in that was the primary responders and they played. And then on a separate day, they brought in the B team and they let the B team play. And then on the third day, they got together and they did kind of a compare and contrast. And the reports we got back from the survey and the after action report was it was an incredible experience. So when we talk about EarthX being flexible and adaptable, that's what we're talking about. You can make it fit the footprint that you want to use. And we do have some training coming up later this summer in July, I believe, where we'll actually talk about how to play EarthX. So if you're interested in some of those other opportunities, go ahead and register, but be part of that facilitators class where we'll talk about ways to do that. I put these slides at the very beginning because I want to foot stomp something that was just an incredible success. At the initial planning meeting, we introduced the concept of joining us to become part of the work group teams. And we made it an open invitation. And man, did it turn out outstanding. We have had 4 very, very, very productive sessions with people from all over the United States and internationally weighing in on a number of different aspects about EarthX. The opportunity that we're offering here is to become part of our design team. If you've ever thought you had a great idea about an exercise, now's your chance. Maybe you never got a chance to actually write the exercise. Now's your chance. You can sign up, become one of our workgroup members, and you'll be able to give us candid, usable feedback as part of our workgroup team. And our workgroup teams are going to continue on even past EarthX. So become part of the design team. We want your expertise and your help as we craft the injects and the flow of the exercise. We want it to be what you want it to be for your organization, for your particular view of the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits. I can't give you any money for this, and I can't pay your travel and per diem because it's all virtual. The benefit is, though, you're going to get to work with some incredibly outstanding people, both the EIS Council team, which you'll get to know on a first name basis, but also the work group members from across the world, especially across the US, but across the world, and get different perspectives and expand your understanding of what things drive certain other aspects of the sector. And I mentioned that these work groups are going to continue. It's still time to join up. We're going to talk about that. But we have a new initiative that we launched this year called the Global Resilience Commission. And the commission work is going to continue beginning in July. And we would like you to join a work group and hang on for the ride. Become part of charting our course towards a higher level of resilience. Lots and lots of capabilities here. So again, join the team, register for a work group. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. We want you to a couple of things, expand your own network. When you do that, we want your ideas about how to get more people to the EarthX opportunity. A free exercise that increases your ability to be prepared and gives you a path towards higher level of resilience. And did I mention that it's free? Why wouldn't we want every single person to do that? We need our communities to be able to survive so business can come back. So think about it. Join us for this. When you join us, be prepared to send in your injects and anything you think that would help us with inject drivers, environmental conditions maybe you've seen through a flood or a fire. It was interesting, the first work groups expanded into all the black sky threats, so it's a wide open territory. We'll look at resource issues and workforce issues, which came up quite a bit in the first series, and we'll talk about potential special training concepts from real-world experiences that you will bring to these meetings. And I mentioned just a second ago that the GRCOM discussions are going to kick up once we get through this current EarthX development phase. So in July, our work groups will come back together after this next session and really start helping us refine resilience for the future, resilience going forward. So these slides, as I mentioned before, will all be sent out. Do not try to write down that hyperlink. I am going to put all the hyperlinks in the email message that'll go out with the slides and the video link. But the health and medical work group, if you wanted to make note, that one is on May 11th. That's a Tuesday, and it'll be at 1 o'clock. The panelists will be able to speak, but everybody who registers will be in the audience, and we'll take questions and chat as we go through the session. And I just got to compliment again all our facilitators and all our lead panelists did just a great job. So health and medical, May 11th. The emergency management and public safety work group, May 13th. That one's going to go at 10:30 in the morning. Again, don't worry about that link. You'll get that in the email. We're doing a great one on critical infrastructure and utilities work group. What an incredible group of people to get together from the electric subsector, the energy sector, the water sector, oil, natural gas. We've brought in the transportation sector. Just a great group of people really looking at these cascading impacts that happen from any one of these black sky disasters. Incredible opportunity if it's not your cup of tea, maybe just to sit in and listen to some of the subject matter experts that our team has brought together. That one will go on Friday, May 14th at 11. And then we've got one on May 13th, which will be Community Leaders CERT and VOAD. I can't say enough about this group. They did just an outstanding job. And this is one of the footprint areas that we want to see all our community leaders, but especially Bridget, our CERT and our VOAD work groups come together and really get the word out. And I mentioned Bridget because she's kind of the one of the original brain trust people that got me thinking about, let's expand this and bring more people in. So Bridget's one of the leaders in the CERT, and we greatly appreciate all our CERT volunteers that are part of this team. May 13th at 1 o'clock. And you guys seriously take me up on this. Register for these, sit in, expand the group, and we'll bring you over when we move into the GR Comm session. So moving forward, let's get into the exercise this year. That's a little bit of how we're going to get there. This is one of my favorite slides that I use. What are we really trying to do with EarthX? We really can't afford to be caught off guard again. And if we don't do better at avoiding these failures of imagination, we're going to. Something is going to happen. One of the black sky threats will happen, and we're going to be dealing with something that unfortunately a lot of people are not going to be prepared for. If you work with us on EarthX, you'll at least have the tenets to begin started your effort. A few points. Climate change is real. We won't even talk about the deniers these days. But the problem with climate change is its impact is there, and it is unpredictable. Things are happening in today's world we never even considered 20 years ago. What am I talking about? Record wildfires. The last 2 years of wildfires in the Southwest and just the West in general, as it can all the way up the Pacific seaboard, high loss of life and critical infrastructure impact. We now have in our lexicon something called PSPS. And if you live in California, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where we have to turn off the power to avoid having a fire. No one considered that 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. In the last 3 years, it's the real world, causing complete changes in how we have to think about doing business. Back-to-back 100-year floods. Used to be a joke, say, well, how often is your 100-year flood? In my tenure as a director of emergency management for a pretty good sized state, I had 3 of these in 5 years. I saw the Ohio River flood beyond its banks to the point where we had to literally, the Corps of Engineers had to blow all the flood control levees in place, a place called Bird's Point. So we're talking about a new level of flooding, whether we want to admit it or not. And then ultimately, if you need an indicator, if you need a barometer of what we're talking about, we got new weather. We've got something we don't have a recorded history on. If you go back to 2016 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a place that's not unfamiliar with floods, they got 20 to 30 inches over the footprint of Baton Rouge in 3 days. Think about 30 inches of rain where you live. Any place is going to flood with 30 inches of rain. This is the other one that I routinely have discussions with people about, and I'm going to share it with you all, and you can use this slide to your heart's content. There's always somebody who says, well, that can't happen here. Ranger and I have had an ongoing dialogue and debate with a number of people that said, well, you can't have a flood in the desert. Ranger has the data that says, yes, you can. And it doesn't have to happen right where you are to have a negative impact. If it happens and it impacts any of your critical infrastructure that is fed to you from outside your region, then it's going to impact you. And guess what? Almost all critical infrastructure throws across a region. So you can lose power because a generation station went down. You can lose power because a substation transfer point went down. Not that it flooded in your location, but the one that serves you flooded. And the other question you got to ask is, are you really sure that it can't happen there? Or are you just hoping that it won't happen there? And then the flip side of all this is maybe it just hasn't happened yet. You don't want to be the people that have to have it happen to them first before they realize they need to get ready. And the odds are, if you're on this call, you're not one of those people, but you may have somebody in your team that's like this. We all got climate deniers, even up until just last year. I think we probably still have some out there. Climate change is real, and we got to get ready for what it's doing to us. So I got a couple of questions on the side about, well, you keep using the term black sky. What are you talking about? Why is that important? Black sky is actually this concept that when we lose power for a long duration, for the first time for many of us that live in urban areas, you're going to be able to step outside and clearly see every star in the sky. But that's not the important part. The important part of why we prepare and get ready for black sky events is they're a direct threat to our society. If you have a long duration power outage, you can begin ticking off about the 12-hour mark that people are going to perish. People will die. The medically fragile, the medically vulnerable, they exist at home on backup systems where they have an air compressor or refrigeration or different things that keep them in their house. When power goes off, they have a few hours and then they're in trouble. We're talking about a complex catastrophe environment where the things that happen, one thing trickles into the next thing that trickles into the next thing. Some of the first things that talk about when you lose power is, with a few exceptions, you're most likely going to lose communications very, very quickly. Now, some of the new cell towers do have battery backup on them, but it's a limited battery backup. It's not connected up to a generation system. Someday they'll be connected up to a solar panel with a battery storage, which will extend it. But for most of us, we're in the rural or even in the urban environments, that's not today. And when you start talking about the cascading consequences from a complex catastrophe, you start thinking about the impact of things like the water system. And when the water system shuts down, a number of different industries that we all count on become suspect. The most obvious one is hospitals. Hospitals have to have potable water to be able to operate, but more importantly, they've got to be able to move wastewater. So the cascading consequences begin to build on us very, very quickly. Some people say, well, we're switching from coal to natural gas. Well, guess what? Natural gas depends on electricity for the pressurization stations and the drying stations. So those things become suspect. One thing trips into the next thing, trips into the next thing. If you've ever been in a location when the power goes off and all the stoplights start flashing, imagine what that's like in an urban environment where you've got literally hundreds of thousands of people on the road network, or people dependent on the signaling for the road network, or the airports, or the trains. So all of a sudden you start to get a feel, our transportation networks will be grounding to a halt. To solve these problems, it's going to require the highest possible level of coordination. So we have to work these things out ahead of time in a cross-sector manner. And it is going to be extremely resource intensive. What's the one big takeaway from the pandemic? Although there's a myriad number of them, the number one is the fragility of our supply chain. When the power goes off, we're not going to be moving things across the country very easily. We have to understand the supply chain and understand how we prioritize. And then ultimately, you got to understand as a team, as an organization, even down to a family, prior planning is essential if you're going to be able to escape some of these situations or survive them. But the one thing I want to leave you with is none of this is impossible. Great story that I share, and I share it maybe too often, but an organization of long-term care homes contacted us after the first couple of Earth X's and said, when you went black sky and you killed communications and you killed the electricity, we were lost. We had no idea what to do. We're not trained on any of this. And they stuck with us and they trained with us for a couple of years. And the second year, we started actually offering not just an exercise, but actual training. The third year of EarthX got an incredibly nice letter which said, the first year we thought this was hopeless. I just wanted you to know, John, that this third year, we actually knew what to do when comms went out. We knew how we were going to communicate. And we found a way to do backup communications. And we had a backup plan for how we were going to manage patient data. I felt great about that. Those are all things that we're trying to stress in our EarthX play. And there are a myriad number of lessons per sector that can be learned in advance. So it's not impossible. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. A few things just to kind of set a fine point to what we're doing this year. This is climate change driven disasters, and we've picked fires and floods. Just a few things. Natural disasters in 2020, greater than 268 billion. The only reason it's not a solid number is we're still calculating parts of it. 5 months in and we're still calculating the impact. And that does not include the pandemic. There were 416 national or natural disasters worldwide in 2020. but then there were 8,100 that died in these natural disasters. And that number is probably a little suspect. The bottom line, though, is if any of those were preventable deaths, that's something that we've missed and we've got to do better. So when we start thinking about these climate change driven disasters, there's some things that we want you to consider as we build out EarthX. One is the difference between passive situational awareness and active situational awareness. You all that have played before know we stress situational awareness. We want you to consistently always be advancing your own situational awareness. This year's exercise is going to force you to think about evacuation planning and whether you ought to evacuate or not evacuate. We're also going to give you a chance to think about advanced resource management. Resource management may be in the middle of the disaster is not number one, but the second that you can stabilize, resource management is a priority. And then, of course, to be able to meet the demand of the response and the restoration, how do we do mutual aid? How does your organization do mutual aid? Even if it's a local organization that's under the communities block, how do you find additional help? We know for emergency management, a number of other specific sets, it's EMAC, the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. But how do the rest of the world do this? How do we pull people together? It's best if you do it ahead of time, I can tell you from firsthand experience. Then we want you to be thinking about looking forward and thinking about the solutions that need to be brought to bear, because you'll feed those back to us and they actually build into our playbooks that we use as we do some of our training. Ultimately, though, everything in a Black Sky event, we talk about continuity and contingency planning. And this year's hallmark, the end of both phase 1 and phase 2, we're going to walk you through some of the actions for restoration. One of the areas that we've got to get better at as a country. So the framework, I'm going to quit reading slides to you now and I'm going to hit some high points. You will get these slides, so feel free to make a note and then you can circle back. Everything we do here is on real world and it's going to be unfolded over 2 phases. Normally we do 3, this year we're going to do 2. A little bit longer, a little bit more in depth, but very dynamic. We want you to think about sustaining and restoring your own operations. But as you start putting your team together, and we really hope people can be together this year or figure out how to do it virtually, we want you to make sure that you've got leadership involved and your team leaders involved in the exercise. Tremendous number of people played last year, but to be honest, it was a lot of people playing as individuals. We did have some organizations that did get together to play, and several did it virtually. Again, this year we hope it's going to be even more. But we want you to use our play, use the EarthX play to solve the issue and reinforce your own best practices. And remember, be prepared to get your socks knocked off. Once again, we're going out to Hollywood for our video production. And we had a hand in writing the scripts. We've seen where they're going to be. It's extremely engaging, and it's going to pull you right into the exercise using the Battle Rhythm Manager one more time. And this is a Battle Rhythm Manager version 2. So it's a little bit more slick. Let's just say that. That's the easy way to say it. Battle Rhythm is an online web-based tool, so you have to be able to get to the web. We are going to make sure that it supports, again, multiple lanes of play across multiple phases. Literally, we will have hundreds of people playing across each day across the 60 days of play from 1 September through 31 October. We are going to draw a hard line. We believe that this year we're going to end it on 31 October. Last year we said that, and then somebody with a big heart said, just keep it going for a little bit. We ended up getting about another 250 people to register and play after the end of the exercise. One of the cool questions that always comes up, and one of the things that makes EarthX kind of unique, is you pick when you want to start the exercise. You pick the day, you pick the start time. You can split EarthX up over a number of days, and we will cover that in July if you decide you want to do that. But totally unlike some of the other exercises where you got contractors involved and they're going to be there at Monday at 8 o'clock, so you have to start at 8:30. You figure out what works best for your team. We consider ourselves now Semper Gumby, very, very flexible if you're not familiar with that. And you pick when you want to do it and make it work for your organization. You do have to register, and we hope you encourage everybody that's on your team to register as an individual and family, and get as many people into the game as possible. EarthX is self-facilitated, it's self-assessed, it is discussion-based, and it is a tabletop exercise. So We don't facilitate your play, and we do not do an assessment. We do a roadmap. We take your survey responses, your questions that you give us answers to, and we help build the next year's exercise. EarthX 21 is built off responses from EarthX 19 and 20. You do get to self-identify the functional areas you want to play in and the lanes. I'll have a slide on that coming up in a second. Very broad. We were talking to an organization in another country just this last week, and they were saying, well, so EarthX is only for emergency management, right? I said, no, we 7 functional areas and 38 lanes of play. We are way better than Baskin Robbins. We have a flavor for everybody. If you can't find a role to play in or a pressure point in EarthX, give me a call. I'll bet I can figure one out for you. It is very dynamic, but it's dynamic discussion. We set it up, we give you the questions to think about, and then we want you to have an active discussion on what your organization thinks and arrive at what you kind of a consensus, tell us your thoughts, and then move on. One thing though to know, again this year, I always get a question is, how long does it take to play EarthX? Well, it really depends on how long you want to conduct your discussion sessions. I think you can have a pretty great individual exercise in a couple of hours if you're playing by yourself or your family. If you want to have a really good exercise with a team, you probably ought to block out 4 hours because it is in depth. You can shrink that if you need to and just contract some of your discussion sessions. But I will tell you that the 2 that we're throwing at you, both fire and flood, easily could be day long each if you chose to really get into the discussion and chart out how you would do business. Totally up to you though. We don't evaluate you on the amount of time you play. It's the main thing is that you get some lessons learned. So you talk about the decision cycles that are part of it. Again, I'm going to not read the slides here, but think about what we talked about. Remember, we're going to give you opportunities to think about the impact on your workforce. We're going to give you a chance to think about how you're going to manage resources. We're going to force you to think about, well, should I consolidate or should I decentralize operations? There is no one right answer. It all depends on what you're dealing with. And then ultimately, we are going to give you the opportunity at the end of both phase 1 and phase 2 to really push on restoration because it's EarthX. We will go black sky. It will be bad. But then how do you put the pieces back together? And that is very important. So the concept, just a few points on this. This is a well-used slide. EarthX is come as you are. We don't ask you to do a lot of prep up. We are going to make some prep material available to you, some training online, really some great stuff coming your way this summer. It is widely distributed, so you don't know who else is going to be online playing when you're playing. We automatically know we're going to have people play in Australia, so they actually get about a day start on us as we start the clock up. But last year, 41 countries all over the world, and we hope to expand that this year. If you know anybody in South America that you could encourage to play, Ranger and I would appreciate it. That's been a tough nut to crack. Last year, we were overjoyed. We got our first real play out of Africa. South Africa played, and that guy's become a great partner with us, been part of the work groups, and really just a testament to how we're building this thing out. But ultimately, when you think about EarthX, it's not a lights and siren exercise. It's a discussion exercise. Roles, responsibility, how you're going to make decisions. The really cool ones where you get to evaluate yourself and decide what you need to work on. Some assumptions though, just so those of you all that maybe this is your first rodeo on this, you're going to get everything you need to play EarthX. It all comes to you on the web. Some of it will come to you in a couple of handouts. We do what I think is a pretty great facilitator manual and a pretty good user guide. We changed the format last year. Ranger did a ton of work on it. Whole new format, landscape format as far as the way it lays out. And we have embedded a lot of training material through hyperlinks into both the workbook and in the actual exercise. So it's all going to be there for you as you need it. But obviously, if it's online, you've got to have the internet up and running. And with everybody going to school last year, we know some people had some bandwidth issues, but I think a lot of that's been worked out this year. You're supposed to bring your own policies and procedures. We will not ask you for those, but if you're going to play the way your organization is going to play, show up with those so you know you're following your own rules. We do recommend that you have at least one person, if you're going to play as a group, like in an EOC or a boardroom, ask someone to be the facilitator and maybe somebody else to be the recorder. We do ask you to give us your responses back in the exercise. That lets us know whether you're actually getting the material or not. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, we do not do an assessment. If you want an assessment, and if you're doing a grant, you do have to do an assessment. Do that on your own. Pick your own team and do that assessment, and then do your improvement plan, and you're off to the races for some grant funding. So EarthX, the actual exercises. I've talked a little bit about this. I'm going to hit this really quickly. 2 phases of the exercise. Phase 1, we're going to put you right in the middle of an emerging fire situation. Develop situational awareness, but it's a fire, and it's going to impact your community. Phase 2, we're going to build off phase 1, although they're disconnected. Obviously, one thing leads into the other. We're going to put you in a flood scenario. And as I mentioned with climate change, floods are not the typical riverine or coastal flooding we've seen in the past. We're talking about massive dumps of water, which basically overwhelm your ability to manage the flood. You have to think about the impact of critical infrastructure and services and operations. And we will be giving you some valuable preparatory training and advanced material. So it really is a complete exercise experience. And we're proud to offer it to you, and we really do appreciate the comments and the feedback that people have provided. Ranger and I take those very, very seriously, and we build towards the next version. So EarthX this year, floods and fires. The theme is, are you ready? And the question is, are you ready? These are the 7 functional areas: individual and families, communities and leaders, government functions, critical lifeline utilities, medical and healthcare, private sector, and communications and IT operations. Very similar to the 7 that we used last year. We changed just a few words. We think we got a sweet spot with these. These scale well from the local level all the way up to the federal and international level. And we write for all 3 levels. So when you start talking about the concepts and managing the expectations, these are some things to think about. You're going to get lane specific information for the lane that you register for. We're going to evolve your environment across the exercise phase. It will end up being a black sky scenario, as I've mentioned. We want you to think about the impact not only to your own person or your own community, but what's going on in the regions that you occupy, the areas, the states, the regions, the international relations. I can tell you firsthand, you're going to get to deal with multiple cross-sector injects per phase. One of the things we stress from the EIS Council standpoint is an impact on one sector is an impact on multiple sectors. We very much believe in cross-sector planning and coordination. So we're going to give you an opportunity to learn and practice that. We want you, though, as you practice the exercise or conduct the exercise, is to try to build consensus using the discussion points that we give you in the actual questions that we'll ask you to respond to. But I can tell you, ultimately, it all comes down to making a decision and then evaluating that decision as new information comes in, and then move forward. And yes, there is a chance, Virginia, you will get a chance to give us team and individual responses. We've narrowed those down a little bit. This is not a reading exercise. This is actually an exercise in thought, but we do want to know what you think, and we do want you to capture some of it in relatively easy to write format, bullet comments, nothing super long. But I will compliment some of the players over the last 2 years, really stopped at the end of phase and gave us several paragraphs of some incredibly great, well thought out material. And as I mentioned, we factor that into the next year's exercise. So if you're a good writer and you want to do that, we'd be more than happy to take your responses. So looking at it again, the threat is real and the threat is now. I wish I could tell you this is something in the future, but I can't do that. I know for a fact we've already started having wildfires in the US, and not just in the Southwest. We've had them in the Midwest. We are being ringed as I speak with floods. Floods are coming, fires are coming. Very interesting to talk to the EU. When we used to talk to fire to the European Union, they didn't want to have a lot to do with it. But in the last 3 years with climate change, a number of their environments have changed, and places that were once considered to be very wet and moist are now dry and are catching fire. And so when Scotland calls and tells you that they're worried about fires, you know climate change is actually happening. What you've got to ask yourself is, what level of preparedness are you at for yourself, your family, and then really got to turn that back to your organization. Is your organization really ready? If not, let EarthX be one of the tools you use to help make them better prepared. I will tell you, there's no secret to this one. We're going to put you in some tricky situations, and you're going to have to think through evacuation. And we're doing that specifically because of evacuation things that did not go as well as anybody wished they would have, both in the Southwest and also in the Southeast. Loss of life occurred in both. And the subject matter experts will have testified and have written up that if people paid more attention and had better situational awareness and were ready to move when they were told to move, they probably would have not perished. So we're gonna use that as one of our black sky points this year. And then I've mentioned this several times now, and at some point, probably in about 6 months, I'll quit talking about it. And that is restoration. I'm a huge believer that it's not a matter of just having the event and then letting everything take care of itself. We've got to find a way to improve the restoration of critical lifeline utilities and communities. And if they don't go hand in hand, it's disjointed and it puts people at risk. So just a few words on this. We hit it pretty hard last time. I shouldn't have to sell anybody on this. Floods happen around the world. They're happening at a greater rate. The Pacific Rim countries are going to be devastated by climate change way before 2050, maybe before 2030. But if you're in the US and you've got your head in the sand, I'm going to provide you with data going forward at our workshops that you will not be able to ignore. Floods are happening at a level that in the past, we did not think things like this would happen, or they would truly be 500-year floods, but they're not. They're 500-year floods that are happening every 5 or 6 years, and they're 100-year floods that happen back to back, sometimes twice in the same year. Terrible situation. And then this new level of fire, we have always combated fire. Fire is probably the original threat that mankind, had to face when things started becoming civilized. But the kind of fire we're talking about now, where what was once considered a wildland fire or a wildfire occurs close to an urban area, and that urban area then becomes a conflagration, is costing us billions of dollars and hundreds of manpower or thousands of manpower hours and hundreds of lives. So we've got to figure out a way to do a better job. It's not that we don't have great firefighters. We're blessed with some of the best firefighters in the world in the United States. Absolute true professionals, both of wildland and urban firefighters. But the environment that we've built with this close connectedness is something that I'd like to say it snuck up on us, and in some ways it did, but it's no sneaking anymore. We know we're in the middle of it. And so fire is something we've got to be concerned with. When you look at EarthX, we've got a number of learning objectives. I've talked about a lot of these. You'll have this slide going forward. We also, as always, we have brought in the resilience learning objectives, and you'll have this one as well. Our goal is to get you out of the fear zone and get you into the learning zone so that you can then move into the growth zone and take your organizations to the next level of resilience. These are the actual functional areas that we're going to play. We've talked about that. This is a throwback slide, but I threw it in here so you'd have it. When you get into the registration for EarthX, you get to pick which lanes you want to play. You can play multiple lanes, but not multiple lanes within the same functional area. You can play multiple functional areas. We encourage you to always play the individual and family lane, but if you wanted to play within 2 functional areas, for example, maybe you're a geek like I am and you want to play the IT and communications lane, but also the government leadership one, that would be a great thing to do. You'd actually see how they fit together. Or private sector should always play multiple lanes to know what it looks like from one of their supporting sectors, either critical infrastructure utilities or the communications and IT, which absolutely underpin 100% of private sector work. Exercise flow, we're going to do another slide on this, but basically you get the feel here. We start off by giving you an opening video. We take you through situational awareness. Again, this year we're introducing and continuing to push on risk analysis. You'll develop your courses of action, you'll make a decision, and then you'll actually get to update your decision as more information comes in. This is the flow. For those of you all that are graphically oriented, this is a slide I began using last year, I think, but we've actually modified it. We have added in a second roll the dice segment called Monte Carlo. And so after you develop your courses of action, you'll get a chance to getting more information before you make your first decision. And then you'll get a chance after that to get more information and make your final action. And then finally, you'll get a closing video. So this slide very much starts at the top left-hand corner and works its way down to the lower right-hand corner. Each one of those blocks is a segment of a phase, and phase 1 and phase 2 are configured exactly the same, but phase 1 is for fire and phase 2 is for flood. So we talk about active situational awareness, making sure that you're gathering information. And I will tell you throughout our exercises, both the video injects and the Monte Carlo injects, as well as the injects that are framed around the segments, you will pick up new information if you're paying attention, so that your situational awareness constantly gets better. We're going to give you a chance to understand risk, and if this is not part of how you do business, you will get a chance to learn how to do this through some of the materials that we will provide via hyperlinks. Ultimately, though, it's about figuring out, well, what can we do? What are our options, right? What are the options we can consider? And then you get down to making that decision. And a couple of things to think about is who's going to make the decision, when, how, course of action comparison, making the initial decisions, all those things will happen. Monte Carlo, a really cool piece of programming technology that our whiz-bang programmer, Mr. Ray Neal, put together last year. We're refining it this year. There will be 2 Monte Carlo elements, and basically you roll the dice, you spin the wheel, and you get new injects. If you played the exercise twice, your odds of getting the same injects are slim to none. We vary them by the phase, by the event, by the functional area, and by the lane. So they're constantly being changed, and that's why some people like to play the exercise several times last year. A few things to understand about what we're doing. Ultimately, we want you to understand and prepare for these threats, but ultimately we're after that planning sweet spot, which where you come out of EarthX, you understand things that you need to enhance in your own plans, and you push them forward. A few overarching themes that become very important to us at the council, that's supply chain and transportation. COVID, again, the big foot stomp this year and last year. Supply chain is so fragile, and we know we've got to do better. But the other one is workforce protection, and making sure that our people, the people that we work with, the people we care about, our own family members, that they're aware of what's going on and they know what to do. And then ultimately, it would not be an EarthX exercise if we didn't hammer down on cascading consequences. Taken right from the headlines, but very real and very much things we need to continually talk about and practice. So, final planning meeting. We're getting close, guys, getting close. Final planning meeting, June 3rd. That is the link. That link will be in the email that I send out. If the link is hot now, you can register. We will pull the curtain back a little bit more at the final planning meeting. If you played EarthX before, you know I never give away everything about it until the exercise. There's no sense telling you what it's all going to be. But you should have very few questions left about how to get ready for the exercise after the FPM. And we hope you'll join us for that. We'll keep it very tight like this one. So these are opportunities, foot stomp, foot stomp, foot stomp. Everybody pay attention. Last year we did 8 different training webinars. This year we're doing 12 GRCOM training webinars. So this year we've reduced the number of webinars specifically in support of EarthX, but boy, these are going to be awesome. The first one is community fire resilience. We are lining up some true subject matter experts with a history of working in the fire service and being partners with the fire service, and we're gonna bring in exactly what happens in these new kind of the new fire threat where wildfires are close. That workshop will be on 17 June at 2 in the afternoon. Our next one is on flooding resilience. We're going to do that one on 15 July. We're going to talk about the new state of the floods. We will talk a little bit about how to get well after a flood, things to consider, things to be prepared for, how to build teams. That registration link, again, will come to you in the email. And the one that I'm really excited about, we're going to do something that I've not seen in a while, or I don't think I've ever seen exactly what this one is going to be. One of our lead sector coordinators, Shandy Treelor, is working on putting this one together with Dave Miller. We're actually going to pull apart community resilience, and we're going to do it not from a government-centric standpoint, which is where 90% of this stuff happens. we're actually going to talk about the private sector and how we can have active private sector integration and change the face of disasters, change the face of how we address black sky events. So I'm really excited about this one. It'll be a couple of weeks before EarthX actually kicks off. Hope you'll put that date on your calendar and make that one. But I think it'll be a unique experience and one that you'll be glad you participated in. As I said, I'm looking forward to that. A few other things just to put on your calendar. I've mentioned this before. We will do our initial facilitator training session, how to play EarthX 21 in July. We'll follow that up with a final facilitator training, which will be more or less a kind of a walkthrough of the workbooks and the things you should expect when you play the actual exercise. And those will happen in August. You can see the dates there. And then finally, I say finally, I got a couple more slides, but this is important. I knew people were listening last time because people actually did what I asked them to do. So I'm going to ask you to do it again. We're offering for the first time, if you've got a group that you're part of, that you feel like would benefit from EarthX, if you will contact us, we will do a special presentation of the EarthX opportunity for your group. Either myself or a member of my team, and I've got a bunch of really great professionals that work with me, we will do a special customized presentation for your group. We'll talk about EarthX, we'll talk about the opportunity, and everybody will get a real glimpse of what EarthX can be. But you got to send us an email and say, hey, I'd like to do this, and then we will work with you on countering it. We've got several scheduled. We've got one in Canada. We've got one way out in the Pacific Rim. We appreciate Hawaii actually signing up for that. We're going to bring in Guam with that one. So tons and tons and tons of stuff going on there. But if us talking about EarthX for your group helps you sell it, send me an email, and by hook or crook, we'll pull that off. Free opportunity, no charge. So this came up, and it's a little bit cool this year, a little bit different. For the last couple of years, we've offered a certificate of participation. We're not set up to do CEUs, and I'm sorry for that. Maybe one year we'll get to that point, but this is a free exercise, so what do you expect for free, right? But if you do play and you complete the exercise and you complete the survey, we will send you a ready to be framed certificate of participation. And this year it's going to look pretty neat. We're going to come up with something a little bit special. But I want to talk about the two little points down there at the bottom. And if you've got ideas on this, let me know. Guys that have known me for a long, long time know that I am the ultimate old man Boy Scout. Very proud that I got to be in Scouts when I was a kid. And then I got to be an adult leader in Scouts as well, both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And now we just call them Scouts. We're actually going to offer support for the emergency preparedness merit badge through some training we're going to put online, but also playing EarthX. So if you know anybody in the scouting community and you can encourage them to jump on this chance, when you register, there's a flag you can set that says, I'm a scout or I'm part of the scouting community. Set that flag, and if you complete the exercise, you will get a different certificate that talks about the fact that you completed this as part of your role in scouting. We're also going to do that for a number of different kind of commissioner types. Specifically, the regulatory commissioners have approached us about this because they don't get exposed to black sky events very often, and they definitely have a huge role to play in the restoration mission. But if you've got a unique group that you think would benefit by having a special certificate, let me know and we'll see if we can't give them an opportunity to earn that as well. On registration, it's simply a click the box. So again, certificates and specialty certificates, and again, for free, what can you ask for, right? This is pretty cool. So what a lot of people, I think the very first question that came in today is, how do I register for EarthX? Well, this is it. And it'll be part of your links. It'll be one of the links that you get. We're not going out with our marketing for EarthX until 1 June, but if you want to jump in early, and I encourage you to do that, that link is hot now. I tested it myself last night. And feel free to send this link to everybody you know, literally everybody you know. The whole world needs to play this. Everybody in your family needs to play this. Register and don't play. Okay, you missed an opportunity. Failure to register, you really missed a chance though. So feel free to share this as part of your own personal outreach, but the link is hot. Appreciate all the work that went into making that happen this early. And you'll have that when the email goes out today. And hope you will register. I'd like to see the numbers jump up. One reason to register early is you will get continual reminders about the training materials that are going to be being made available. If you're not inside the fence, you're outside the fence, and you may not find out about it. So again, kind of wrapping up now for sure. EarthX 2021 available for play 1 September through 31 October. I mentioned this last time. I mentioned it again. There is going to be a specific marketing on this. There are 2 new specialty standalone exercises, one on electromagnetic pulse and one on cyber threat, built off of last year's very successful EarthX. And obviously, you know, our motto, we believe that we have to plan, train, and exercise for these kind of black sky threats. Those links will also be available. And then finally, kind of my recap here. EarthX, if you got any questions, ask us at earthx@eiscouncil.org. Ranger and I manage that, get a pretty good trickle on a regular basis. Go ahead and register when you get your link. Get yourself a work group, join a work group, sign up for those sessions next week, be on that call, let us get your feedback, and then help us expand the team. Literally send that link out to everybody, tell them to join you. Put your own team together to play. If your business isn't doing it, you can put your own group of professionals together to play. And then finally, ending a couple of minutes early here, I'm going to look and see if there's any questions I can answer. But I want to thank everybody for making time for today. Middle planning meetings are kind of an odd duck, but most of you all have stuck around for the whole thing, so you're obviously very interested in what we're talking about. I think it's a great opportunity. Yeah, there's a couple of questions in here that have been answered. I'm going to let Ranger's answer stand on those, and we'll pull these down. If you want to join one of our groups, join the work group, and you'll get that link tonight or when the video links come out, and we can absolutely make sure that you got whatever you need. So I think Ranger's done just an outstanding. Perry, appreciate your comments, and Perry's a great example here. She's added a comment. Perry's joined the team, and she's actually helping us get the word out to not only local groups, but international groups as well. So she's just proven to everybody that you can be part of the team and you can work from wherever you are, and we appreciate that. So with that, I always like to end early, and so I'm going to end early. You guys be safe out there. I know we're turning the corner on COVID, but remember to be safe, be prepared, and be ready. And I hope you'll join us on a work group call next week. I've been able to sit in on most of those, but also I want you to join us for the final planning meeting in a couple more weeks, and then definitely help us get the word out as we go forward. And everybody be safe. And thanks again for your time today. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks.